Hey YouTube, I'm Tony Masilis. I'm a producer here at the CBS Evening News. And I have the pleasure of working with Katie Couric on a very regular basis.
Pleasure.
It's a pleasure. And you're obviously known for your interview skills. And they wanted us to just ask you a few questions about what makes a good interview.
Okay.
So maybe the first question would be, what makes somebody a good interviewer?
Well, I think it's really important, Tony, to be a gracious host, because I think the more comfortable you make someone feel, the better interview you'll ultimately get. So I know that in terms of body language, I always try to be very warm and welcoming. And I think it's really critical to put someone at ease. I think also you have to calibrate your tone depending on what interview you're doing. It's really important to be very empathetic in some cases, and then to know when you're going to be loaded for bear.
How do you prepare for an interview?
Well, I try to do a combination of explaining what I can in the body of the question without going on and on. And I try to ask questions, obviously, that don't require a yes or no answer, because that's a disaster, because you're left kind of with a lot of dead air. And depending on who I'm talking to, I fashion my questions that way. And I sometimes go through them and think, well, how is this person likely to answer this? And what would be an appropriate follow-up?
It might sound a little bit Captain Obvious, but listening is probably really important.
Nothing is worse for me than as a viewer to watch someone go down a laundry list of questions and not explore something with a little more depth after someone has answered a question already. I think you need to use your questions as sort of a template, but you have to be willing to listen as Oh, it is hard. Sometimes people freeze. Sometimes they're just cranky. And then Bobcat Goldthwait, the comedian, I sort of missed the memo that he screams, so I kept asking him, why are you yelling at me? And I didn't realize, stupidly, that that was part of his shtick. That was
Did you know who he was?
Really embarrassing. I kind of knew a little bit about who he was. Now I certainly know all about him.
Oh, well, I'm sure you do, the hard way.
You should remember who you're serving, your audience. You're trying to inform them. You're trying to illuminate a certain subject, enlighten people. And I think you need to keep that in mind. This is if you allow your interview subject to communicate whatever message he or she might have at that moment, then you've done an effective job.
Thank you so much, Katie.
I have put together some easy steps for you to follow when conducting an interview. Make sure to research before interviewing. It is a good idea to plan your questions beforehand.
Be sure to dress neatly.
Politely greet the person you are interviewing and then introduce them to the audience. Be sure to keep eye contact and look interested by nodding and smiling.
Thank them at the end.